The prodigal son turned back for his first love and declared to me that he would only love one person in his life. But that person wasn't me. I covered the hickey he had just left on my neck, pretending to be indifferent. I asked, "Is she prettier? Or am I prettier?" My first love extinguished the cigarette in his hand and laughed unrestrained lie, "She's pretty. And not as seductive as you." It would be a lie to say that I didn't react at all when I heard those words. From high school to university, Cedric and I had been in an ambiguous relationship for a full 3 years. Except for not officially announcing our relationship, we had done everything else. I was his first love, his friend, and his confidant. But I was never his girlfriend. Because Cedric once said that he hated being tied down the most. So over the years, he indulged in the sea of love, lived a life of debauchery, and had a continuous stream of women. Yet he never had a proper girlfriend. The dense soreness in my heart gushed out like a tide. But I casually ed and smiled while teasing. "A good girl. Huh?" Cedric slowly exhaled a smoke ring and squinted his eyes, looking in a certain direction on the playground. I didn't know what he saw, but the lips that had just kissed me curved into an arc. "Yeah. She's very good and has never been in a relationship before." I lowered my eyelids and pinched the palm of my hand with my fingertips. The hickey on my neck, which he had left in a moment of passion, actually made me feel a bit of pain at this moment. Cedric had said before that he never dated good girls, because they were boring and troublesome. So I gradually changed from being rigid and conservative before to having curly hair and red lips now. All just to cater to his preferences. But now, Cedric raised the corners of his mouth in a smile, as if reminiscing, when I kissed her. She didn't even know how to breathe. Her face was so red from holding her breath. And she didn't dare to push me away. "Damn, Leno. She's so innocent." He cursed in a low voice and shook his head. The smile on my lips could no longer hold. After a moment of silence, I said in a hoarse voice, "What's her name?" Cedric clicked his tongue and smiled, ambiguously touching my neck and saying, "Her? You know her too." After saying this, he turned around and left the classroom and went downstairs. I subconsciously followed behind him, constantly thinking about who this person could be. Countless speculations appeared in my mind, but I denied them one by one, until a girl in a white dress ran over from a few meters away. Cedric opened his arms and gently pulled her into his embrace, with a tenderness on his face that I had never seen before. And she coquettously wrapped her arms around Cedric's neck, smiling shyly. I froze in place, too shocked to come back to my senses for a long time. Because she was my roommate. Lillian. Lillian had always been a good girl. She never went to places like nightclubs or bars. Her daily routine was just going to the classroom, the dormitory, and the library. It could be said that she was the most standard good girl. She and Cedric were two completely different people. There was no way they could have any connection at all. Except for that time. That time, I was having a video call with Cedric in the dormitory and didn't notice that someone was taking a shower. And the always conservative Lillian unexpectedly walked out of the bathroom, wearing only her underwear that day. And unfortunately, Cedric saw her. After that, Lillian's eyes were red from crying. I still remember when I told Cedric about this. He clicked his tongue and said, "Troublesome." I pinched my fingertips. For a moment, I didn't know if my heart was too dirty. But clearly, Lillian was the one who was most aware of my ambiguous relationship with Cedric. "Cedric. How did you end up with her?" Lillian's voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up at her. But I didn't see the slightest bit of guilt in her. When she met my gaze, there was even a trace of hostility on her gentle and quiet face. She even deliberately and intimately hooked her arm through Cedric's. I sneered inwardly and looked at Cedric again. I wanted to see what he would say. After all, he had just been passionately kissing me. We just happened to be going the same way. Cedric replied casually. My heart sank. And I was just about to say something. Suddenly, a shout rang out in my ear, telling me to get out of the way. Before I could react, I saw Cedric suddenly pull Lillian away and protect her. And I was knocked down to the ground by a sudden football. Intense pain surged through my body, and my ears were buzzing. I tried to get up from the ground in an embarrassed state, But no one came to help me. I instinctively wanted to call out to Cedric. But all I saw was him pulling Lillian and looking her up and down. And he saw the hem of her skirt that had been soiled by the football. Cedric, you gave me this skirt. Lillian's eyes were red. And she bit her lip and said sadly, it's my favorite. This is the first time I've worn it. Cedric's face instantly darkened, and he stepped over me and strode towards the person who had kicked the ball. I covered my sore shoulder and watched him fighting with others. No matter how people tried to pull them apart, it was useless. I just felt a heavy feeling in my chest. Maybe it was my heart that was hit. Or maybe, you let out a lull sigh. I remembered the Cedric who would also stand up for me. In high school, my personality wasn't as free and easy as it is now, so when I was surrounded and bullied, I could only shrink in place with a cold body. What I remember most clearly was my first encounter with Cedric. At that time, I lost a game of truth or dare with my classmates in the class. Those boys knew that I had a good figure and deliberately asked me to take off my coat. Then they looked at me with lecherous eyes and made lewd comments about me. When I was at a loss and helpless, it was Cedric who stood up and fought with those boys who were bullying me. He even announced to everyone afterward that I was under his protection. Since then, a tender shoot of love sprouted in the girl's heart. Later, in order to catch up with Cedric, I gradually lost myself. He said he didn't like girls who were gentle and well-behaved. So I permed my hair, put on makeup, and wore short skirts, trying hard to change myself in the direction he liked. But now, he said he liked good girls. I got up from the ground and left the playground alone. The incident on the playground alerted the school's official website. After all, Cedric was a well-known prodigal son at University A. He came from a prominent family, was handsome, but had always been living a carefree and unrestrained life. He never stopped for any single girl. But this time, he fought for an unknown girl. It directly shocked everyone. They all said that Cedric had really fallen for her this time. I turned off my phone and stopped looking at any information about him. But I couldn't avoid it. In the evening, Lillian came back. I asked her, when did you start dating him? Lillian smiled triumphantly and said, it was a long time ago. We started last month. But this month, Cedric was still maintaining an intimate relationship with me. No wonder when I was passionately entangled with him that night, he vaguely called out Lillian, in a daze. I sneered softly. Do you know what Cedric said about you to me? Lillian stared at the hickey on my neck and said. I looked up. What? There was a hint of a smile on Lillian's face. He said you're very cheap. I paused slightly, and my fingertips pinched harder and harder. But I still couldn't suppress the sharp pain in my heart. I really don't have a penchant for being a mistress. So that night, I seriously considered breaking up with Cedric. But the next day, Cedric parked a supercar in front of me. He tilted his head and asked me to get in the car. Then we went straight to a hotel. I was very familiar with this hotel. Every time Cedric and I had an intimate encounter, it was here. Vivienne, give me a blowjob first. Cedric touched my lips and smiled lewdly and ambiguously. I turned my head to avoid his hand and asked calmly. Didn't you say you turned back for love? Cedric lit a cigarette and smiled. Just have one last good time. After this, I'm going to be faithful to my baby. What he said was both affectionate and ridiculous. I suddenly remembered what Lillian had said last night. Maybe I am indeed cheap, but there should be nothing wrong with my morals. I suppressed the bitterness in my heart and avoided Cedric's kiss. And I said word by word. Cedric, I'm not that cheap. I turned around, picked up my bag, and when I opened the door, I heard Cedric say casually behind me, Vivienne, if you leave, don't come back. His voice, upon careful listening, was tinged with a bit of lust and anger from being disappointed. After all these years of habit, I instinctively stopped in my tracks. I heard Cedric click his tongue and laugh. And my heart suddenly ached. The words cheap kept replaying in my mind. I could even imagine the tone and expression with which Cedric said these two words. It must be similar to now. I didn't hesitate any longer. But as soon as I walked out of the door, I was forcibly pulled back by Cedric. His heavy breathing hit the side of my face, and he let out a sigh in a hoarse voice. I really give in to you. I won't be faithful anymore. How about I only be with you from now on? But don't let Lillian find out. Before he could finish, I pushed him out directly. My chest heaved. As if I was seeing this person clearly for the first time. Cedric. Don't disgust me. It was pouring rain outside. I ran into the rain but didn't feel anything at all. Cedric was disgusting. And I was disgusting too. The rain kept falling. I squatted under the bus stop sign, looking as embarrassed as a drowned rat. There wasn't a single dry part on my body. People around me all looked at me with strange glances. I hugged my knees with both hands. And my lips turned pale. A few rowdy men came from not far away. One of them approached me and smiled lewdly. "Sister. How much do you charge?" I looked at him expressionlessly. Just as I was about to get up and leave, the other few men surrounded me as well. I felt nauseous in my stomach and tried to push them away but didn't have the strength. I could only shout in despair. "Get lost. I'm calling the police." However, this sentence made them even more excited. Just when I was helpless, a cold male voice sounded, "I've already called the police. The police will be here in 3 minutes. Are you sure you still want to stay here?" The man looked very young and should also be a college student nearby. His eyes and eyebrows were cold and clear, and his features were handsome and upright. Those men immediately scattered in all directions. My eyes were red. And I choked up. "Thank you." The man looked at me coldly with his indifferent eyes. After a long while, he hummed. And that's when I realized who this man was. Orion? My high school classmate. He was the complete opposite of Cedric. Orion nodded at me and asked, "Do you need me to send you back to school?" I remembered that he was also from University A. So I didn't refuse. When we reached the sign that said "Male students stop here," downstairs of the dormitory, I nodded at him. I said thank you again. This location was still some distance away from the dormitory, and I would definitely get wet in the rain. But since I was already soaked, I didn't really care. Unexpectedly, had until felt my obsession. Just as I was about to step out from under the umbrella, I was grabbed by the hand by Orion. He infuriately stuffed the umbrella into my hand and then didn't say a word. He walked into the rain alone. I stared blankly at his back and couldn't come back to my senses for a long time. Remembering my high school days, the connection between Orion and me was probably that he was the first in our grade and I was the second. Apart from discussing the wrong questions together every time the test papers were handed out, we didn't have any other communication. So regarding the possibility that Orion might have a crush on me, my intuition told me that I was just overthinking it. When I returned to the dormitory the next day, I saw Lillian wiping away tears beside the bed with red eyes, and several of my roommates around her were comforting her. When they saw me come in, they immediately fell silent. They just looked at me with an unfriendly and disgusted gaze. I stopped in my tracks, not understanding what had happened. The next second, Lillian stood up, as if she had suffered a great humiliation. She walked step by step in front of me. Then she directly slapped me and cursed, "Why are you so shameless?" My mind went blank for an instant, and I instinctively covered my red and swollen face from the slap. After coming to my senses, I raised my hand to slap her back. Then I was stopped by several of my roommates around me. They stood in front of Lillian, as if they were upholding justice. "King Yan has such a gentle personality. Yet you can push her to this extent. You slept with her boyfriend. What's wrong with her slapping you?" "That's right. Mistresses deserve to be slapped." Lillian, surrounded by others behind her, looked at me triumphantly. I gritted my teeth and said, "Shouldn't the person you should hit the most be Cedric? After all, I didn't know you two were together when I slept with him." Lillian's face darkened. "You're still quibbling. Wasn't it you who went to a hotel with Cedric yesterday? Someone saw you getting into a supercar and going to the hotel with their own eyes. You even left a hickey on his neck, deliberately provoking me." I laughed. "So after I left that day, Cedric found another woman." I suddenly felt a bit sorry for Lillian. I don't know who she is, but it's definitely not me. After I finished speaking, I looked around. All I saw was malice. I turned around and left the dormitory, not noticing the gradually distorted expression on Lillian's face. Nor did I expect that she would do such a thing. I was exposed on the confession wall, with a 3000 and receipt written about me. The title was that I had an unseemly private life and was caught red-handed for maintaining sexual relationships with multiple people. The accompanying picture was a photo of me surrounded by several men on a rainy day. That 3000 and receipt was extremely vicious towards me, fabricating my private life from various aspects. Even my bold usual outfits became evidence of my unseen lines. And the comments below were even more offensive. I stood downstairs of the dormitory. Tremblingly turned off my phone. And took a deep breath. The ear-piercing sound of a supercar rang out at this moment. I looked up and saw Lillian getting out of Cedric's sports car. The two of them were like an ordinary young couple, and Lillian was reluctantly lingering at the dormitory entrance. Cedric got out of the car, pressed Lillian against the car door, and forcefully claimed a kiss by pinching her face. Lillian blushed and pushed him away. When the two finally finished kissing, I suppressed the tremor in my heart and strode over. When Lillian saw me, a hint of mockery appeared on her still blushing face. I held my phone in front of her eyes and demanded, "Did you do this?" Lillian didn't deny it, and only smiled softly and said, "Am I wrong?" Without hesitation, I raised my hand and slapped her hard. Lillian covered her face and looked at me in shock. She probably didn't expect that I would slap her in public. Remembering the slap I received yesterday, I raised my hand again. But this time, I was stopped by someone. Cedric's face was gloomy, and he stared at me word by word with suppressed anger. "What the hell are you doing?" After saying that, he threw my hand away forcefully. I was pushed to the ground by this great force. When I looked up again, Cedric was gently caressing Lillian's reddened cheek from the slap, and there was a look of distress in his eyes that I had never received before. "Cedric." Lillian's delicate voice sounded. Cedric frowned and looked at me coldly. "Apologize to her. And this time I can let you off." I suddenly felt it was very boring. Cedric was boring. My infatuation for the past 3 years was also boring. I staggered to my feet and stared at Lillian with a cold gaze. "I will call the police about this matter. Also, Cedric. Don't come to me again in the future. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore." Cedric's body paused slightly, and his hand on Lillian's waist subconsciously tightened. He looked at me, and there was a hint of annoyance in his eyes. He added, "It's just asking you to apologize. What's the big deal? You hit her like this. You're the one bullying people. And you still think you're in the right?" I sneered in my heart. I was slandered with false rumors about my private life and slapped for no reason by her. In the end, it turned out that I was the one bullying her. It was so disgusting. I didn't argue with them anymore. I was afraid that if I looked at Lillian's triumphant face one more time, I would vomit. When I arrived at the police station, I finally burst into tears while covering my face. The policewoman thought I was crying because of the false rumors about my private life, and she patiently comforted me beside me. I shook my head. Only I knew why I was crying. It wasn't for Cedric. Nor was it for myself. It was for the self that had sprouted after being saved by Cedric 3 years ago. After finishing the statement taking at the police station, I went straight home. I didn't go back to school. Instead, I went to my high school. When I arrived, I saw another acquaintance. "Why are you here too?" I asked. Orion was dressed casually and stood there inferiorly looking at me. Only when he heard my words did he speak. "Teacher's Day." I understood. He added, "Shall we go together?" I nodded. After we went back to school together, we didn't go in immediately. When we were standing at the school gate, Orion suddenly stopped. "Wait for me a moment," he said calmly. I instinctively stood still, but I saw him go to a cake shop near the school. After a few minutes, he handed me a bag of cakes. "I've already found out the IP address on the confession wall. You can submit this as evidence to the police." His tone was gentle, and his voice wasn't loud, but it made me suddenly look up and stare at him intently. "You were very nice in high school. And you're still very nice now." Orion stared at me deeply, and there was an emotion in his eyes that I didn't want to understand. My eyes turned red, and I took the cake with a choked voice. "Thank you." Orion didn't say anything. and just raised his hand to pat me on the shoulder. But suddenly, a piercing car horn sounded from behind. I turned around and saw Cedric sitting in the car. He was holding the steering wheel with one hand and staring at me coldly. I lowered my eyes and didn't look at him. "When you're free someday, can I invite you to dinner?" The fact that he could find out the IP address undoubtedly gave me great help. I held the small cake in my hand and spoke sincerely. Orion curved his lips into a smile. "Okay. Okay, what?" Behind me, Cedric's voice suddenly sounded. He strode up to me, grabbed my arm, and pulled me into his arms. Then his tone was mixed with anger and mockery. "You found a new lover quite quickly. When did you get together?" Orion was very clean. As far as I knew, there were no girls close to him at all. He had always been an excellent student both in character and learning. The kind of good kid from other people's families. So I felt a hint of anger when he was slandered. "Cedric, don't be disgusting here." My eyes were cold, and my tone was even tinged with a hint of disgust. Cedric's face suddenly dark and for a moment, and soon returned to normal. He smiled and said, "He knows that you've been fucked by me until I'm bored." Slap, I directly slapped him hard, interrupting his words. "Don't disgust me either." Cedric was slapped and turned his head aside, and his tongue pressed against his cheek. After a few seconds of silence, he turned his head back, and there was a hint of danger in his eyes. "You hit me?" Orion took 2 steps forward and stood in front of me, calmly saying, "If you don't respect others, isn't it normal to get slapped?" Cedric squinted at me and Orion, and gritted his teeth with a smile. "Fine. Vivienne. You're really something." He turned around and strode towards the car. I only heard the sound of the car door being slammed shut heavily. "You and him?" Orion's tone was hesitant. I smiled freely and said, "It doesn't matter anymore." "Okay. I'm free tomorrow." He nodded and responded to what I said earlier extremely quickly. I lowered my head, pursed my lips, and smiled. Because of the substantial evidence, the police quickly found Lillian. They took her away right at the school. Lillian had never seen such a situation and was so scared that she burst into tears on the spot. When she came to her senses, she hurriedly called Cedric. People at the school who saw her being taken away by the police were talking about it. And at 3 p.m., I received a call from Cedric. There wasn't the anger I expected in his voice. "Sorry. I thought she was very innocent." I didn't say anything. Cedric took a deep puff of his cigarette and added, "Vivienne, let her off this time. After all, she just lacks a sense of security. It's my fault." I was so angry that I laughed. "Cedric, where did you get such a big nerve? But this matter is indeed your fault. You'd better not let me find your handle." After I finished speaking, I directly hung up the phone and then found my tutor. I was determined and demanded that once the charges were established, the school must expel Lillian. My tutor thought it was better to avoid trouble, so he agreed to my request. The next day, Orion and I went to the agreed-upon restaurant. Lillian pleaded guilty. She wrote an apology letter by hand and posted it on Moments and a confession wall. She thought she would only be locked up for a few days and then be released. I smiled. When she came out, she would find that she had already been expelled. The school has informed her parents. Her parents are quite overbearing and have always thought that she is a very well-behaved child. I was swirling the coffee in my hand, but my mood wasn't as happy as I expected. Orion pushed the dessert in front of me. "Have something sweet." He could see the emotion in my eyes. I didn't refuse. We talked a lot, mostly about things in high school. I talked, and Orion listened. In the end, I couldn't help but ask, "You. Why did you help me?" Orion's movement paused for a moment, and he raised his eyes to stare at me. "In high school, I really liked talking to you. Later, you chased after Cedric and ignored everyone else. I watched you gradually change yourself. But I knew that you were still you. I just always hoped that you would change for yourself. Later, I thought about why. Probably because I liked you since high school." It was rare for him to say so many words at once. But I wished I hadn't heard these words. Orion liked me. Even during those years when I debased myself, he still liked me. My eyes turned red, and it took me a long time to lower my head and say hello. After a few seconds, Orion picked up a tissue and carefully wiped the corners of my eyes. My tear-stained face was reflected in his eyes. I looked at him, and finally couldn't control myself and hugged him. Orion's body stiffened slightly. After a moment, he raised his hand to pat my back soothingly. "Thank you," I sobbed softly. When I looked up again, I saw Cedric standing at the door with a gloomy face. I didn't know when he came, but I could also guess the reason why he was here. Lillian should have asked him to come and put pressure on me. Cedric strode towards me, and the first words he said were, "What? Haven't you hugged enough?" Orion turned around, frowned at him, and said unceremoniously, "Is there something wrong?" Cedric lowered his eyebrows and eyes and sneered, "I can't believe you're quite good at flirting." I couldn't stand him humiliating Orion, so I said coldly, "Cedric, please watch your words." Cedric saw the coldness in my eyes. And at that moment, he truly realized that I really wanted to distance myself from him. "Didn't you say you would like me for a lifetime? Have you changed your heart now?" He questioned me word by word, and every word was filled with anger. I smiled sarcastically. I was young and naive back then. I was blind, okay? Cedric seemed even angrier. His face turned livid. His chest heaved, and his fists gradually clenched. After a while, out of extreme anger, he laughed instead. "Just because I'm dating Lillian?" I didn't say anything. In fact, I should thank Lillian. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten out of the quagmire so quickly. I'm no longer interested in her. She's not what I imagined. Cedric calmed down a bit and then said reluctantly, "Vivienne, lasciate sol sai. I find that I'm a bit regretful." I looked at him quietly. "Let's date," he said again. Orion lowered his eyes and glanced at me. I suddenly laughed. I always thought I was the only cheap one. "Cedric, you're the cheapest and most despicable of all." Cedric stood rooted to the spot. And I directly pulled Orion and strode out of the restaurant. When I was on my way back to school, I didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. I just happened to see Lillian's parents causing a scene at the school. I saw Lillian with her head lowered, standing awkwardly at the school gate. The surrounding classmates raised their phones to take pictures one after another, and some were even explaining what she had done. She had openly and publicly spread pornographic rumors with real names. She was stupid, mean, what no sai, and a resentful woman. Listening to these voices, Lillian sobbed miserably. She cried and tugged at the sleeves of her parents, trying to maintain her last bit of dignity. But since her parents couldn't meet the tutor and were full of anger, they directly scolded her in public in various ways. "How could you do such a thing? Your father and I have worked so hard to support you through college. And yet you went fooling around with men. Do you think you're worthy of the money we've spent all these years?" In Lillian's letter of apology, she wrote the reason why she spread pornographic rumors about me was that she thought I had an affair with her boyfriend, and her parents had always forbidden her to fall in love during her school years. I didn't originally want to watch the scene, but Lillian's parents thought scolding wasn't enough to relieve their anger, and they directly slapped her. Lillian's cheeks welled up instantly. When she turned her head, she just happened to see me. I saw the resentment and distortion in her eyes. But I didn't think I had done anything wrong. After she and Cedric were officially dating, I had planned to stay away from Cedric. It was she who kept pestering me, insisting that I had seduced Cedric. I withdrew my gaze and continued walking inside. Just then, Lillian's eyes suddenly lit up, and she cried out in a sobbing voice, "Cedric?" Only then did I know that Cedric had also come back. He was just following behind me and Orion. Unfortunately, Cedric just glanced at her indifferently. Then he withdrew his gaze and walked straight towards me. Lillian looked at him in disbelief. "Vivienne." Cedric followed behind me and called my name. But I never stopped for him again. "Vivienne." I heard Lillian's extremely distorted voice and knew that she had already broken down. After all, Cedric was largely responsible for her becoming like this. But now Cedric didn't want her anymore. After the matter was resolved, I studied hard and took various certification exams. Others thought that I was hurt emotionally and could only vent in this way. Only I knew that I just wanted to improve my own abilities. Orion would occasionally send me some gifts and invite me out for a meal. I knew that for someone with his personality, it was already very difficult for him to take the initiative to this extent. So on Valentine's Day, I took the initiative to ask him if he would like to give dating me a try. I admit that my feelings for Orion aren't very deep yet. But feelings can be cultivated gradually. And it's enough that I have a good impression of him. Orion's reaction at that time was also very cute. He was stunned for a few seconds first. And then he nodded blankly. He also said to me, "Today is Valentine's Day. Not April Fool's Day." I laughed and nodded. He added, "So, once you say it, you can't go back on your word." Lying on the bed, I thought about the scene and couldn't help laughing again. Orion is very nice. I recalled every bit of my time with him in high school. I just regret not waking up earlier. Until a phone call interrupted my thoughts. It was Cedric. During this period, Lillian was expelled from school. After breaking up with her, Cedric returned to his previous life of debauchery, accepting anyone who came along. This was the first time he had ever called me. Listening to his drunken voice, I frowned and wanted to hang up, but Cedric seemed to be able to predict my actions in advance. He said in a hoarse voice, "Don't hang up. I just want to talk to you, Vivienne." I suddenly remembered why I was attracted to Lillian at that time. She was very much like you in the past. I felt nauseous. Did Cedric really think that saying this would make him seem affectionate? The voice on the phone continued, "Vivienne, I should have liked you from the beginning. I just hadn't had enough fun at that time and didn't dare to mess with good students." So he told me that he liked confident and open-minded girls. Only after I really became like that did he dare to approach me. Remembering those past days, my mood has become very calm. "Anything else?" I asked. The panting sound on the phone suddenly stopped. After a few seconds, there was even a hint of a sob in Cedric's voice. He said, "Vivienne, can you give me another chance?" "Get lost," I said coldly and hung up the phone. Belated affection is the most despicable. This summer vacation, Orion and I didn't go home. Instead, we chose to go on a trip. Orion probably rarely expressed his feelings to others. On the way, he bought me a bunch of sunflowers. After hesitating for a while, he said, "They're really nice. I'm giving them to you." I took the bouquet of flowers and kissed him on the face. He blushed for the whole day. In high school, when I was familiar with him, we were both too innocent. So we didn't understand our own feelings. But fortunately, it's still not too late. We didn't return to the country until the day before the start of the new semester. Then I heard some astonishing rumors this time. Several of my classmates who were familiar with me told me that Cedric had been living in bars and nightclubs every day during the summer vacation. Almost every day. He could be seen fooling around with different women. So, as expected, he was infected with AIDS. Now he's receiving treatment abroad and is said to have dropped out of school. It's really true that the heavens won't spare anyone. Cedric's private life had always been very promiscuous. But he was good-looking and rich. So he was never short of women. It's somewhat expected that he would end up like this. My roommate in the same dormitory also told me. She saw Lillian in a milk tea shop. They said that Lillian was working there. Her family didn't want to pay for her to repeat the year, so she could only work and save money at the same time. I don't know if she can still get into University A. But I approve of her choice. Because of a man, she destroyed the result of her 3 years of hard study out of her own selfishness. This punishment is enough for her. Another year passed, and Orion and I went back to our high school. He took out an envelope from the hole in the big tree at the school gate. He told me that he had written it in high school. At that time, he didn't know why I suddenly changed my personality. But when he planned to give the envelope to me, he found that I was changing because of Cedric. Orion saw all these changes. But because he didn't have a proper status, he had no reason to hold me back. At night, I opened the envelope. He wrote a lot in the envelope. He said that I was very nice and asked me if I had encountered anything. He also asked me which university I wanted to attend. Was it still the same one as before? Finally, had until sold my and say. He asked tentatively if he could go to university with me. He carefully tried to find out the reason for my change, but learned that I had made the change because I had fallen in love with someone else. So, he hid his feelings in the tree hole. After all these years, there is finally hope. My tears dripped onto the letter paper, blurring his signature. Fortunately, headings have failed me. It's still not too late.